I'm back, and this video I'm going to show you something special that we only make one time a year, and that's hot cross buns. Easter week and Good Friday is coming up, and a typical traditional item for Good Friday is our hot cross buns. And it's more complicated than the Irish soda bread, but it's really tasty. So I hope you enjoy this recipe. This recipe is from one of my most favorite cookbooks. As you can see, I've had it several years. In fact, I've had this longer than I've known Dave. That gives you some idea of how long it's been around. But it's Betty Crocker's International Cookbook. I've used this for many, many things. It's got a great bread section with breads from around the world: Indian flatbread, challah bread, French breads, Swedish Lucia buns. So tonight we're making hot cross buns. So let me show you what I got here. First thing I did was dissolved yeast in warm water, 2 1/4 teaspoon yeast into a 1/4 cup of lukewarm water. That's water no hotter than 110 degrees. Over here, I've scalded milk, and scalding milk is taking milk to the boiling point, which is 180 degrees, and then cooling it down to 110 to 100 degrees. This is now at just over 100 degrees. So the yeast that I've softened in lukewarm water is ready to go in here. And the reason you scald the milk, it makes the yeast fluffier. It makes the dough fluffier. So what I'm going to do to the milk that's cooled down quite a bit, I'm going to add 1/3 cup of sugar. I'm going to add the yeast. I'm going to add salt, and that's 1 teaspoon salt. I'm going to add my cinnamon, and this is what gives hot cross buns their wonderful flavor. Cinnamon, 1 teaspoon, and I like cinnamon, so I'm going to round that teaspoon. A 1/4 teaspoon cloves. And a 1/4 teaspoon nutmeg. If you can get freshly ground nutmeg, that's the better way. But I have yet to find nutmeg pods and a nutmeg grinder since we moved down here. Okay, so I've got my milk, sugar, seasonings. Now I'm going to add my shortening, which is 1/3 cup of softened butter. See how soft that is? Nice and soft. And now to that, I'm going to add 1 whole egg and 1 egg yolk. I'm going to take the whites out. Okay. And now I'm going to add just 2 cups of flour. 1, 2. This calls for a total of 3 3/4 to 4 1/4 cups of flour. I'm going to use a wooden spoon and just mix this all up. The smell, when you have certain foods that you make only at certain times of the year, the smell just takes you back to those family traditions. Christmas and cinnamon and molasses, gingerbread men for us. Our family always makes gingerbread men at Christmas. And then this cinnamon, cloves, nutmeg with currants or raisins and citron, orange peel. Reminds me of Easter. So it's very wet, very dense. It's going to take some time to get this to the right consistency. Okay, so smooth. Now I'm going to add, I don't have currants, but I have golden raisins. So I'm going to add half a cup of golden raisins to this. Now we're going to mix more flour in slowly but surely. We don't want too much, like I said when I was making the bread dough the other day. You can't take away when you put too much in, so you add slowly. But good to know, it's 3 3/4 to 4 1/4. So right now I've put in 2, so I'm going to add the third one right away. And then I'm going to pull this out onto my surface and knead the rest in, and I'll get back to you when it's all kneaded up. Okay, the dough has been kneaded for 5 minutes. It's taken on about 1 1/4 cups more flour, and it smells absolutely heavenly. The mixture of the milk and butter with the cloves and cinnamon and nutmeg is just, oh, wonderful. So it's nice and smooth dough, like a baby's bottom. I'm going to put that in a clean, oiled bowl. Make sure the top is oiled also, so that when you cover it, whatever you cover it with, saran wrap or a bag like I did here, it doesn't stick to the top because it's going to rise quite a bit. It's going to take, could be an hour and a half. It takes longer than the white dough that I made earlier. Because of the spices, it's going to take longer to raise. So we'll see you then. Okay, so I've let the dough rise and it's all risen. And I've divided it up into 20 shapes. I weighed it, and then I divide that total amount by 20. I didn't want them too small, and now I'm going to shape them into buns, and I'll show you how I do that. So I flatten it out, then I pinch the pieces together, then I turn it over and I roll it. And you're rolling the bottom to seal it up. So it gets sealed like that. And I'm putting them in pie tins that I've sprayed. So I have 20 here. I'm going to put 10 in each tin. So here we go. They're all rolled up, and now they're going to rise again for about an hour, and I'm going to set them on the oven that I'm preheating to 375, and it should take about 40 minutes. I'm going to cover them with a dish towel so they don't dry out, and we'll see what they look like in about 40 minutes. Okay, so the rolls have risen and they're ready to get marked with the cross. Now, usually in my recipe, in fact, it says mark them with a cross after they bake, and the frosting that you make is powdered sugar and milk. But I decided to go the way of the great British baker Mary Berry, who makes a slurry with flour and water, a paste really, and she marks her crosses before she bakes them with this paste of a simple flour and water. So that's what I'm going to do before I bake them. You just spread the flour and water on the cross, or on the bun as a cross, and that gets baked in to the bun. So I'm going to put these in the oven for 20 minutes. So I let them cool off for a little bit longer. You see a couple have been eaten. And initially I thought they weren't cooked right, but then when you cut open when they're cooled, they look pretty good. And Liam, pretty tasty? Pretty tasty. So I'd say this is a pretty good recipe. If you want me to write it down in the Facebook page, I will. But Hot Cross Buns for Good Friday.